Okay, so we have two parts so far to this introduction tutorial to the QBO API gem, and we went over in the first one spinning up an example app, and then we went over running the specs. And now today what I want to go over is creating new specs or modifying existing specs. Now these have to be against your sandbox. All right, not all the specs are recorded against the sandbox, but a good amount of them are. So now to do that, if you know a little bit about, and as mentioned previously, the VCR gem records these interactions and plays them back, which is just an amazing gem. So many advantages to that. Now, one of the real difficulties was getting these VCR recordings to work across multiple sandboxes, and I was able to do that. So, and I want to show you how that works, how you can get into this gem and help contribute. There's plenty of things to do. There's nothing done for the payments API right now, and the list goes on and on of things that still can be done and enhanced in this gem. So I want you to be able to jump in. This is how you do it. So what I did off camera was now I recorded all the specs under a certain sandbox and using a certain app, a QBO API app that we made on the developer site. Okay, that's all done here, okay? Under spin up an example. Go back to that screencast if you need to do that, and because you need to run through these steps. You got to make a new app over at your account, and you get a default sandbox, so you can just use that one, or you can make a new one and if you need to make a second one or a third one, up to 5, go see my screencasts about doing multiple sandboxes. All right, so I've done all this behind the scenes, and what I did was I made a new app, meaning it wasn't the same app I used to do the original VCR recordings. All right, and then I made a new sandbox, and I recorded them down in my .env file, which you're going to see from the other examples. So I have a brand new .env. I have a different git clone. This is from the previous screencast. Let me zoom this window in. And I'm just in sort of a throwaway git clone just to simulate exactly what you're going to be doing. And I got a fully loaded up .env file based off that example of spinning up an example, and it displays all of the creds you need to put in the .env file. So I got a fully loaded up .env file. Let's just run the specs now. So this is a different .env file, and we're running the specs. This is similar to the last screencast, but let's just do this. Get some green, and everything's green. All right, so that shows right there the flexibility of these recordings, because you're using different realm ID, company ID from Intuit, using different tokens, both for the OAuth between you and your sandbox and through the app. All right, so it's all different stuff. It's still running fine. Now, let's go ahead and run through a scenario where we're going to modify something. And the best spec for that is the create, update, delete spec. Excuse me. Let's just take the first one here, for example. Try to keep this screencast short. For customer ref, there's actually another let's see, attribute here to JSON, and that's the name attribute. And I'm just gonna say here, Christian. Okay, so and I want to test this. I want to test to see how it goes across. By the way, this is pretty much meaningless. Even if this is wrong, this does not. This is really just to help sort of like your JSON. Only this matters is the value of the customer ref. But anyway, let's not get off on another path here. Now let me unzoom here. So I'm going to run this spec now on the right window pane, and it's going to run fine. So VCR is not going to punt this out as not recognizing what's going on, even though the body and the payload has changed. But I want to see, this is going to be a big change. I want to get submitted to the project, and I want to see how this is going to work against the real QBO API. Like, is this going to fail? What's going to happen here? So this will work. I'm not going to show an example of it not working, but what you would do is to this existing spec, you're going to just do record all. Okay, and so let's rerun it. So VCR is now going to record this, and let's see what happens. Okay, so that was fine. That worked fine. This change to the JSON worked fine. So you want to submit this to as a pull request. Now, if we go look at Git here, I'm doing Git status. You can see not only did the spec change, but the VCR recording changed. So you did a real new recording. And that can be a problem if you know VCR, but again, it's not going to be a problem. Let's demonstrate more on that. So let's get out of this, unzoom this. Okay, so now you're ready to commit that, and what you would do is just go none here. You always want to have none. That's keeping the recording, and it's going to rerun that recording and not try to do a new recording. So let's see too. Let's swap out the .env file too, just to make sure. So this is going to simulate like if I bring in the pull request down to my machine, and I'm going to check this out. So let me resume this window, and so I have the M file loaded. That this would be like you, and this is all your creds in the .m file, and you see here I have a .m dummy ready to go to swap in. So I'm just going to move this one out of the way. Okay, so there's no .env. Let me put the .env dummy and make it the .env file, and you can see in this .env, it's just this is just a bunch of dummy information, but this would basically simulate like what I would have on my machine or another developer would have on their machine if they're bringing in the pull request. So now that we got that, let's again run the specs, and we can just run the create update spec. Okay, so you see with that VCR recording changed, we're totally fine swapping out credentials. So you have confidence here that you can go in and make these changes to recorded specs. So don't be intimidated by that. I know it's a sort of a strange thing. It's almost always fixtures are used for API clients, and I just think that the great advantages of VCR, it just makes it so easy, first of all, to record that live transaction. So it just records everything for you. You don't need to construct anything. You just make that live request to the sandbox. Most of the large or APIs have sandboxes. And so it totally records all those interactions. There might be 3 or 4. So, I mean, who wants to construct fixtures for these? And what happens is fixtures don't get constructed on these more complex interactions, like if you're responding to an error and then you want to check a customer for the ID and then maybe send an update and not a create request. So it's just a wonderful example of VCR and totally recording that for you against a live real sandbox. So it's great to be able to leverage VCR. And if you have another project, take a look at the spec helper, how this one was done. So you could, on your new API project, you can use VCR in the specs itself to greatly increase the accuracy and the time it even makes, again, to create the specs. So jump in, help get going on this this project for the modern Ruby QuickBooks online client gem.